Okay, hi guys. So I'm gonna read more Toaru Majutsu no Index today. I'm just gonna close these tabs and I'm gonna stream that I'm live on Twitter. Okay, weird. It wants me to log in again, which is weird because I never logged out. Oops. But I guess it logged me out anyways. So I'm gonna log back into Twitter right now and just... What? Why is it being so weird? Twitter is being weird right now. Anyways, I was late because I had to use the bathroom. It keeps locking me out. What? Why is Twitter being weird? Twitter is being weird, y'all. It's being weird. Okay. Okay. Okay, now I can log in, but it wouldn't log me in on my other browser that I use. Okay then, I'll just go back to this, copy the link, and then say I'm live right now. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why. It was being weird. Anyways, let's read. Okay, we're on page 137. I read part of part 2 yesterday before I ended the stream. So yeah, let's get to it. The only sign of her was some porridge sitting on the tea table next to Index. It may have been unfair to Index, but he doubted she could have cooked it, given how she had asked for food after getting caught on his balcony. So he assumed Komoe-sensei had made the porridge. Honestly, you're treating me like I'm sick, Kamijo tried to move. Ow, ow, what the hell? Since the sun's up, I must have been out all night. What time is it? It wasn't just all night, replied Index. The words seemed to catch a bit in her throat. Kamijo raised an eyebrow and Index said, It's been 3 days. 3 days? Wait, what? Why was I asleep for so long? I don't know, Index suddenly shouted. Kamijo's breath caught in his throat, and that shout had seemed like a burst of anger. I don't know. I really didn't know anything. I was so focused on losing the flame magician that was at your house that I never gave any thought the possibility that you would have to fight another magician. Her angry words were not aimed at Kamijo. Her voice was tearing into herself, and Kamijo was so overwhelmed he could not cut in. Tuma, Komoe said you were collapsed in the middle of the road. She was the one that carried you back to the apartment. I was so delighted back then. I had no idea you were on the verge of death while I was nothing but delight in the thought that we had gone away from that stupid magician. Index's words suddenly cut off. This was followed by a slight gap, just long enough for her to slowly breathe in and prepare for the main point of her rant. I couldn't save you, Toma. Index's small shoulders were trembling. She sat unmoving while biting her own lip, and yet Index shed no tears for herself. Her heart would not allow even the slightest bit of sentiment or sympathy. Kamiju realized he could not give any words or consolation to someone who had sworn not to show any tears even for herself, so he thought about something else instead. 3 days. They could have attacked any number of times if they had wanted to. In fact, it would not have been surprising if they had retrieved Index 3 days ago when Kamiju had collapsed. Then why? Kamiju gave a puzzled look, and in his heart he could not tell what their enemy was thinking. He also felt like the term 3 days held some kind of deeper meaning, with a feeling like bugs swarming along his back. Kamiju suddenly recalled something. The time limit, Tuma, what is it? The Index merely looked at Kamiju in puzzlement. If she remembered him, the magicians must not have erased her memories yet, and from how she was acting, the symptoms had not set in either. Kamiju felt relieved, but he also wanted to kill himself for wasting those precious final 3 days. However, he hid all that way in his chest. He did not want Index to know. Damn it, I can't move. What the hell? Why am I completely wrapped in bandages? Does it hurt? Does it hurt? If it did, I'd be writhing around. What's with these bandages all over my body? Don't you think you went a bit overboard? Index said nothing. Then tears welled up in her eyes as she was unable to bear it any longer. That stabbed into Kamiju's heart more than anything he could have shouted at him. And then he realized that not feeling any pain was actually a bad thing. Komoe-sensei did not use recovery magic anymore. He was pretty sure Index had said that it would be faster if he could just heal his wounds at the cost of a bit of MP like in an RPG, but it seemed the world was not that kind. Kamiju looked at his right hand. His utterly destroyed right hand was wrapped in bandages. Come to think of it, an Esper that's been through the curriculum can't use magic, right? What a pain. Right, the pathways are different between a normal person and Esper, said the girl in an unsure tone. It does seem those bandages will heal the wound, but your science sure is inconvenient. Our magic would be faster. That may be so, but I'll be fine without using anything like magic. What do you mean, anything like? Index pouted her lips grumpily at Kamiju's comment. Tuma, do you still not believe in magic? You're as stubborn as someone with an unrequited love. I didn't mean it like that. Kamiju shook his head with it still pressed against the pillow. If at all possible, I don't want to see that face of yours when you talk about magic. Kamiju recalled the look on her face when she gave her explanation of rune magic in the passageway of his dorm. Those eyes had been as cold as the pale full moon and as precise as the gears of a clock. Her words had been more proper than a bus tour guide's and yet more lacking in humanity than a bank ATM's. That had been the existence known as Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the Grimoire Library. He still could not believe that was the same girl sitting before him, or rather, he did not want to believe it. Tuma, do you not like explanations? Huh? Wait. Do you not remember? You were talking about runes in front of style like some kind of puppet. To be honest, I didn't really like it. Oh, I see. I awakened again. Awakened? The way she said it made it sound like the puppet-like form was her true self. Like the kind girl before him was the false form. Yes, but please don't say too much about what I'm like when I awaken. When I awaken. Kamiju was unable to ask why. Before he could say anything, Index said, speaking when you aren't conscious is something like talking in your sleep. It's embarrassing. Also, she said, it seems I've become more and more like a cold machine, and that scares me. Index smiled. She smiled as if she was actually about to collapse, but she did not want to worry anyone. It was an expression that no machine could make. It was a smile that only a human could make. Sorry. Kamiju simply apologized. He felt bad about thinking even for a second that she was anything other than human. It's fine, you idiot. Index's comment that made it unclear if it really was fine or not was accompanied by a small smile. Are you hungry? We have porridge, fruit, and snack. A full course of staples for the sick. How am I supposed to eat with my hand? He trailed off when he realized Index was holding chopsticks in his right fist. Index-san? It's too late to start worrying about it now. If I hadn't fed you like this, you would have starved to death over the past 3 days. Okay, fine. Just let me think. God. Okay, she's feeding him. Why, are you not hungry? Index put down the chopsticks. Do you need me to wash you? An indescribable feeling crept across Kamiju's body. Huh? What is this incomparably bad feeling? What is this horrible unease that makes me think seeing a video of these past 3 days would make me die of embarrassment? Okay, I doubt you mean any harm by it, but just go sit over there, Index. Index fell silent before saying, but I am sitting down. Index surely had the best of intentions as she sat there holding a towel, but Kamiju found himself unable to attach the term innocent to it. What is it? Oh, Kamiju had fallen silent, and now he tried to change the subject. I was thinking about how you look from here in this futon. He did not think she looked weird. Her pure white nun's habit and motherly behavior made her seem like an actual nun. And insulting to her as it might be, he found this surprising. And more importantly, the way she looked at him with those teary eyes and cheeks pink due to crying, she seemed quiet, but for some reason he just could not bear to speak that aloud. So instead he said, oh, it's nothing. I noticed that your nose hairs are silver too, is all. Index's smile freeze dried in place. Tuma, do you know about what is in my right hand? Well, the porridge, no, wait. Don't give it up to gravity. In the next instant, Kamiju Tuma met the misfortune of having his vision filled with the white of the porridge and the bowl. Part 3. Kamiju and Index learned firsthand that porridge was difficult to get out of a futon or pajamas. Index was battling with the goopy grains of rice and a hint of tears in her eyes, but a knock at the door drew her attention. Is that Kamoe? Are you not going to apologize? He had not been burned since the porridge had already cooled by the time it was dumped on him. Kamiju had still passed out again when the carbohydrate struck him because he was expecting it to be scorching hot. Huh? What are you doing in front of my house? Said a voice on the other side of the door. It seemed Kamoe-sensei had spotted whoever had knocked on the door as she returned from wherever she had been. Then who is it? Kamiju looked puzzled. Kamiju-chan, I'm not sure what's going on, but it seems we have visitors. The door clicked open. Kamiju's shoulders jumped in surprise. Behind Kamoe-sensei stood 2 familiar magicians. The 2 of them looked somewhat relieved upon seeing Index sitting like normal. Kamiju frowned in suspicion. Kamiju frowned in suspicion, naturally thinking they were there to retrieve Index. However, they could have done that 3 days prior when Kamiju had collapsed. There was no reason for them to let her stay loose until the day of her treatment. They could have just confined her somewhere until it was time. So why did they wait until now to come? Kamiju's muscles naturally tensed up as he recalled the power of the magician's flames and sword. However, Kamiju no longer had any reason to just fight Style and Kanzaki. They were not evil magic cabal forces. They were from Index's church to take her into their care. Kamiju was worried about Index. In the end, he had nothing he could do but work with them to hand her over to the church. But that was simply from Kamiju's point of view. The magicians had no reason to cooperate with Kamiju. Simply put, there was no reason why they couldn't just decapitate Kamiju right then and there and take Index away with them. Styles seemed to enjoy the fact that Kamiju stiffened up upon seeing them, and he said, "Hey, it looks like we won't have to worry about you escaping with those injuries." At that point, Kamiju finally realized what the enemy was trying to do. On her own, Index could escape the magicians. After all, she had eluded the church for almost a year on her own. Even if they captured her and locked her up somewhere, she might be able to easily escape if she was alone. With only a few days until the time limit, they might not have been able to catch up to her again if she had truly started fleeing again. If they imprisoned her somewhere, she might escape, and it was possible she could escape even in the middle of the ceremony. However, the same cannot be said if she was burdened with an injured person like Kamiju. That was why the magician had not killed Kamiju and why they had let him return to Index. They wanted Index to refuse to give up on him so that he would function as a convenient shackle. They had overlooked him slowly so they could move safely and surely take Index to their care. Leave, magicians. And now Index stood between the magicians and Kamiju. She stood up and spread her arms. She looked a bit like a sin-bearing cross. It was all going exactly like the magicians had planned. Index gave up on running because of the shackles that were Kamiju. Style and Kanzaki both twitched slightly. It was as if they could not bear to watch it despite things progressing exactly as they expected. Kamiju wondered what expression was on Index's face. Her back was facing him so he could not see. But those great magicians froze in place. Kamoe-sensei was not the direct target of her feelings, but she still averted her gaze. Kamiju wondered what they were feeling. He wondered what it must feel like to be looked at like by someone who would. He wondered what it must feel like to be looked at like. He wondered what it must feel like to be looked at like that by. Oh, why is this sentence so hard? He wondered what it must feel like to be looked at like that. To be looked at like that by someone you would go so far to kill for. Stop, Index. They aren't our enemy. Leave. Index was not listening. Please, I'll go wherever you want and I'll do whatever you want. Just please, I beg of you. A bit of girlish cry was mixed in at the heart of the hostile tone she had worked up. Just don't hurt Toma anymore. Just how much damage did that do to those magicians who had once been our greatest comrades? For an instant, just an instant. Extremely pained smiles like they had given up on something appeared on the two magicians' faces. But then their eyes froze over like a switch had been flipped. These were not the gazes of people looking at their comrade. They were chilling gazes of magicians. Those gazes held their conviction to lessen the misfortune of the parting as much as possible, rather than give her the cruel fortune of getting to know them. Those gazes held their feelings for her. that were strong enough for them to choose to abandon their comradeship and become their enemy. Those things would not be destroyed. Because they did not have the guts to tell her the truth, they could only watch on as the worst possible scenario played out. The time limit comes in another 12 hours and 38 minutes, announced Style in the tone of a magician. Index must not have known what he meant by the time limit. We simply wanted to see if her shackles would function or not, so we do not need to worry about her running off when the time comes. They were more effective than even we expected. If you do not want to have that toy taken from you, give up any hope of escape. Understand? Had to be an act. They had wanted to celebrate in tearful joy that Index was okay. They had to want to rub her head and place her forehead against her. They'd want to rub her head and place their forehead against hers to check her temperature. That was how important she was to them. All the horrible things Style had said about Index were simply to perfect that act. He had to actually want to spread his own arms and act as Index's shield. Kamichu could not imagine how much mental strength it would take to do what he was doing. Index gave no response. The two magicians did and said nothing more. They merely left the room. Why did it turn into this? Kamichu gritted his teeth. Are you okay? Finally, Index lowered her raised arms and slowly turned back towards Kamichu. Kamichu instinctually closed his eyes. He could not bear to look. He could not bear to look at Index's face covered in tears and relief. If I make a deal with them, he heard a voice in the darkness, I can keep your life from being destroyed anymore, Tuuma. I won't make them intrude on your life anymore, so don't worry. Kamichu could not respond. He merely thought in the darkness of his closed eyes. Can I let go of our memories together? Part 4. Night came. Index was asleep next to the futon because they had been asleep since before the sun had set. The room lights were not on. It seemed Kamui-sensei had headed for the public bath, leaving the two of them alone in the room. Kamichu wasn't entirely sure that was so because Kamichu had fallen asleep himself due to his poor condition, and it had been nighttime by the time he had awakened. Kamui-sensei's room had no clock, so he did not know what time it was. The air felt especially cold as the term time limit crept into his mind. Index must have been incredibly nervous over the past 3 days because she had fallen asleep after being assaulted by weakness. She was asleep with her mouth hanging open, and she looked like a child who had exhausted herself nursing her sick mother. It seemed Index had completely abandoned her original goal of merely getting into an Anglican church. If Kamichu forced himself to stand up in his beaten-up state and tried to take her to a church, she would probably resist him. He felt a little embarrassed as she occasionally muttered his name in her sleep. Index's defenseless, kitten-like face gave Kamichu a complex feeling. No matter how much determination she showed, it was all going to go away the church wanted in the end. Whether Index made it safely to a church or was captured by the magicians part way there, she would still end up being taken by Necessarius and having her memories erased. Suddenly, the phone rang. The phone in Kamui-sensei's room was a black rotary phone that could be called an antique. Kamichu still slowly looked over at the phone that was giving off an old-fashioned ring that sounded like an alarm clock. He felt he should really answer the phone, but he also didn't know if it was right to answer. Kamui-sensei's phone without her answer. Oh, but he also didn't know if it was right to answer Komoe-sensei's phone without her permission. Nevertheless, he grabbed the receiver. He didn't really care so much about answering the phone, but he would feel bad if the noisy ring woke Index up. "It's me. You can tell who I am, right?" The voice coming from the receiver was a polite female voice even over the phone. He could tell she was trying to keep her voice low as if speaking in secret. "Kanzaki? No, it would be better if we do not learn each other's names. Is Index there? She's asleep. Wait, how do you know this number?" "Oh, she's asleep, but wait, how do you know this number?" We knew the address, so it was not hard to look up." Kanzaki's voice was now calm. "If she's asleep, that's perfect. Listen to what I have to say." Kamichu frowned suspiciously. "As I mentioned before, the time limit is tonight at midnight. We have put together a schedule to end everything by that time." Kamichu's heart froze. He knew that there was no other way to save Index. He knew that, but when the end was thrust before him like that, he felt concerned. But Kamichu's breathing grew shallow. "Why are you telling me this? Just stop. If you tell me this, I might end up wanting to resist you, even if it gets me killed." The voice from the receiver fell silent. It was not complete silence, though. He could hear suppressed breathing mixed in. It was a very human silence. "Then, do you need time for your farewells?" "What?" "I will be honest with you. When we first had to erase her memories, we spent the 3 days prior solely focused on creating memories. On that final night, we did nothing but cling to her sobbing. I believe you have the right to that same opportunity." "Don't fuck with me." Kamichu thought he was going to crash the receiver in his grip. "That's the same thing as giving up. You're just telling me to give up the right to try. You're just telling me to give up the right to desperately challenge this." "If you don't understand, let me tell you one thing. I haven't given up yet. In fact, I won't be able to give up no matter what. If I fall 100 times, I'll get back up 100 times. If I fail 100 times, I'll get back up to 100 times. If I fail 1,000 times, I'll crawl to my feet 1,000 times. That's all there is to it. I'll do what you couldn't." "This is not a conversation or a negotiation. It is merely a message and an order. Whatever you intend to do, we will recover her at the appointed time. If you try to stop us, we will destroy you." The magician's voice was as smooth as the voice of a receptionist at a bank. "You may be trying to negotiate with me, counting on the human kindness left within me, but that is exactly why I'm giving you this strict order." Kanzaki's voice was as cold as a drawn Japanese sword in the night air. "You will say farewell to her and leave before we arrive. Your role is nothing more than being shackles for her. The fate of chains that have lost their purpose is to be cut." The magician's words were not merely words of hostility or scorn. She sounded like she was trying to stop someone with a wound from struggling so they would not tear the wound open further. Fuck that." Her tone oddly irritated Kamiju, and he snapped back at her. "Everyone is showing their own incompetence onto me. You two are magicians, right? I thought magicians made the impossible possible. But look at you. Can you really not do anything about this with magic? Can you really stand before Index and proudly tell her you tried every last option? Nothing can be done about this with magic. I wouldn't be proud of it, but I find it impossible to lie to that girl," said Kanzaki as she gritted her teeth. If we could do anything, we would have done it long ago. No one would want to use this cruel ultimatum if they did not have to. What? It seems you cannot even give up if you do not understand the situation. I don't think this is a good use of your last moments with her, but I will give you a helping hand of despair. The magician spoke smoothly, as if she was reading from the Bible. Her perfect memory is not a type of esper power, nor is it a type of magic. It is a natural part of her. It is the same as bad eyesight or allergies. It is not a type of curse that can be broken. We are magicians. With any circumstances created by magic, there is danger of them being dispelled by magic. I thought it was an anti-occult defense system created by a magic specialist. Can't you do something with indexes 103,000 grimoires? She said that controlling those would give you the power of a god. But if you can't even heal one girl's head, it doesn't sound so great to me. Oh, you're referring to a magic god. The church is extremely afraid of Index's rebelling. That is why they put a collar on her, so that maintenance only the church can perform must be carried out once a year by erasing her memories. Do you really think they would leave any possibility of her removing that collar herself? Kanzaki was speaking quietly. There is probably a bias in her 103,000 grimoires. For instance, she was probably not allowed to memorize any grimoires that dealt with manipulating memories. I would be willing to bet that the church has put up some security like that. God damn it, Kamichu cursed under his breath. You said 80% of Index's brain is taken up by knowledge of her 103,000 grimoires, right? Yes, it is apparently actually 85%, but it is possible for us magicians to destroy those grimoires. An original grimoire cannot even be destroyed by an inquisitioner by an inquisitor after all. This means that we can only hollow out the remaining 50% of her memories to increase the empty space in her head. Wait, let me check chat. Then what about us on the science side? She fell silent. Kamichu wondered if it was possible. The magicians knew their field magic backward and forwards, and they couldn't do it. If they were still not going to give up, it was only natural to move to a different field. For example, there was science. And if they were going there, it made sense to have someone to act like a go-between. It was the same thing. It was the same as having a local person help you out when you had to walk through an unfamiliar country and negotiate with various people. There was a time when I thought the same thing. Kamichu had not expected her to say that. To be honest, I simply did not know what to do. The world of magic that I had believed in absolutely was unable to save a single girl. I understand the feeling of trying to grasp at straws. Kamichu had a feeling what was coming next. It just doesn't feel right to hand her over to science. He had expected it, but actually hearing it felt like being stabbed in the brain. I know that you people cannot do something that we cannot. Your crude methods of filling her body with some unknown drug and chopping her up with a scalpel will do nothing but unnecessarily shorten her life. I do not want to see her violated by machines. Okay, that's it. How the hell can you say that when you never even tried it? I have a question for you. You keep talking about destroying memories, but do you really know what exactly memory loss is? No response came. She must really not know much about science. Kamichu pulled some curriculum textbooks that were lying on the ground towards himself with his foot. It was a recipe of powers development, including a mix of neuroscience, rare psychology, and reactionary drugs. How can you talk on about a perfect memory and losing memories when you don't even know what it is? There are a lot of different kinds of memory loss. He started flipping through the pages. There's aging, I guess, like senility. And apparently you can't lose your memories from getting drunk with alcohol. There's a brain disease called Alzheimer's, and there's TIA, where blood stops flowing to your brain and memories disappear. Memory loss is also a side effect of general anesthetics like halothane, isoflurane, and phenyl, of derivatives of barbituric acid, and of drugs like benzodiazepine. Benzo what? That's a hard word to say. Kanzaki's voice was surprisingly weak for her, but Kamiju had no duty to explain it all to her, so he ignored her. Simply put, there are tons of ways to medically eliminate someone's memories. It means that there are methods you people can't use to get rid of her 103,000 grimoires, you idiot. Kanzaki's breathing froze. However, those methods did not remove the memories. Instead, they damaged the brain cells. An old man with dementia was not able to remember more just because he lost some memories. But Kamiju left that part out. Even if it was just a bluff, he had to stop the magicians from forcibly erasing her memories. And this is Academy City. There are plenty of experts that can manipulate people's minds with powers like psychometry or marionette. Not to mention that there are research facilities all over the place. It is way too soon to give up hope. Apparently, there's even a level 5 at Tokiwadai who can remove people's memories just by touching them. That was where the last ray of hope truly lay. No voice came from the receiver. Kamiju continued on to truly defeat Kanzaki, who was starting to show signs of hesitation. What will you do, magician? Are you still going to get in my way? Are you going to give up on trying when someone's life hangs in the balance? Those words are much too cheap to convince an enemy, said Kanzaki with a slight tone of self-derision. We have a tried and true method of saving her life. I cannot trust in this untested gamble of yours. Do you really think you can change that with some reckless statement? Kamiju remained silent for a bit. He tried to come up with a rebuttal, but could not think of anything. He had no choice but to accept it. True enough, in the end we just can't understand each other. He had no choice to accept that she was the enemy, despite the fact that there was a chance she could have understood, because she had been in the same situation once. Yes, if people who wished for the same thing would always become allies, the world would be completely filled with peace, she said. Kamiju's grip on the receiver strengthened slightly. That being upright hand was his sole weapon, and it could negate even the systems created by God. Then you are my arch enemy, and I'll defeat you, he said. Given the difference in our specs, the result of that is immensely clear. Do you still intend to call this hand? Perfect, I raise. I just had to invite you into circumstances where I'm guaranteed to win. Kamiju bared his canines toward the receiver. Style had definitely not been weaker than Kamiju. Kamiju had only won because Style had lost the sprinkler system. In short, differences in strength could make up with strategy. Just so you know, when the girl collapses next to you, should think of it as too late. Kanzaki's words were as sharp as the tip of a sword. We will be there at midnight. You do not have much time left, but make your final useless struggles good ones. You're not gonna see me cry, magician. I'm gonna save her and steal all your scenes. Stay there and wait for us, she said and hung up. Kamiju silently put down the receiver and looked up at the ceiling as if he was staring up at the moon in the night sky. Damn it. He swung his right fist down on the tatami mat as if he was punching an opponent he had pinned down. His wounded right hand did not hurt even slightly. His head was in such chaos that his pain had been blown away. He had acted quite full of himself on the phone, but he was not a brain surgeon or a professor of neuroscience. Something might be able to be done scientifically, but that normal high school student had no idea what exactly that might be. Even so, he could not just stop. He felt an intense impatience and unease, as if he had been told to walk back to town after being in the middle of a desert where nothing but the horizon could be seen in every direction. Okay. Once the time limit came, the magicians would mercilessly destroy Index's memories. They were probably already lying in wait near the apartment planning. They were probably already lying in wait near the apartment planning to capture her if they tried to escape. He had no idea why the magicians did not just attack then. It would just be out of sympathy for Kamichu, and it could be because he did not want to move Index right before the time limit. He had no idea which of those it was, or even if it was something else. He looked at Index's face as she lay curled up asleep on the tatami mats, and then stood tall and fired up. Academy City had more than 1,000 research facilities, both large and small. But a first-year student like Kamiju had no connections with any of them. He was going to have to contact Kamoi-sensei. Whether anything could be done in less than a day was a valid question. Index's time limit was drawing near, but Kamiju had a secret plan for that. If her brain would burst, if it continued to add more memories, couldn't he buy her some time by putting her to sleep so she could gain more and more memories? So she couldn't gain any more memories? A Romeo and Juliet-like drug that put one in a state of apparent death sounded very unrealistic. But he did not have to go that far. Basically, he just had to put her to sleep with some laughing gas, a general anesthetic used for surgeries. He did not have to worry about dreaming while she was asleep and creating memories that way. Kamiju had learned a bit about the system of sleeping in the powers development lessons. He was pretty sure that people only dreamed in a state of light sleep. So once one entered a state of deep sleep, your brain rested to the point that it even forgot that it had dreamed. The first was to contact Kamoi Sensei and get some help from a research facility that dealt in either neuroscience or maybe Esper powers related to the mind. The second was to slip past the magicians and get Index out of there, or to create circumstances in which he could not defeat the two magicians. Kamichu decided to start with calling Kamoi Sensei, but when he thought about it, he did not actually know her cell number. Well, I'm an idiot, he said, almost wanting to kill himself as he looked around the room. He saw nothing out of the ordinary. But the cramped 4.5 tatami room looked like an unknown kind of labyrinth with no lights on. The room was as dark as the sea at night, and the books and knocked over beer cans littering the floor looked like they could be hiding something behind them. When he thought about all the drawers in the dresser and cabinet, he felt like his consciousness was going to slip away. Trying to find a cell phone number that might not even be there seemed like an insane task. It felt like he had to search through a giant landfill to find a single battery he had accidentally thrown out the day before. Even so, he could not stop. Kamichu started turning over everything in that area, searching for a memo or something that could have her cell phone number written on it. Every minute and every second counted, so searching for something that might not even be there was hardly a sane thing to be doing. Every time his heart beat, it got on his nerves. And every time he breathed, more impatience started burning within him. At first glance, he may have looked like he was throwing everything near him around in anger. He checked deep in his cabinet and pulled out all the books on the bookshelf, while Kamiju was rampaging around. Index continued to sleep curled up on the ground, which made it look like time had stopped for her. Seeing her in complete cat in the kotatsu mode, he oddly felt like hitting her. But at the same time, a scrap of paper stuck in a notebook that seemed to be for a household account book fluttered to the ground at his feet. It was Kamui Sensei's itemized cell phone bill. Kamiju immediately grabbed the scrap of paper and found the 11-digit number written on it. It seemed she had spent an entire 142,500 yen on the cell phone. The previous month, she must have gotten stuck with some terrible phone. Normally, he would have rolled around laughing for about 3 days at that discovery, but that was hardly the time. He had to make a call, so he headed for the bank phone. He had a feeling it had taken quite a bit of time finding the phone number. He had no idea if a few hours had passed, or if it had been only a few minutes. Kamiju's heart felt so concerned that his sense of time had been thrown off that much. He called the number and Kamui-sensei answered after the third ring as if she had timed it. About to foam at the mouth, Kamiju yelled an explanation that was hard for even him to understand because his mind could not sort out what he wanted to say. My major is psychokinesis, so I don't have many connections to mind-hound related things. You could probably use the Takizawa Institution or the Total University Hospital, but their equipment is second rate. Calling in a guest expert who excels at that field would be a safe bet. I know Yotsuba-san in Judgment is a level 4 telepath, and she would likely be willing to help. He hadn't given her much of an explanation, but Kamui-sensei still rattled off an answer. Kamiju seriously decided that she should have consulted with her from the beginning. But Kamiju-chan, even if the researching teachers are terrible people who have flipped their day with their night, they probably wouldn't like to be called on by a student at this hour. How about we just prepare a bed in a facility for now? What? No, Sensei, I'm sorry, but this is urgent. Can we wake them now? Can we just wake them now? But Kamui-sensei sounded a little annoyed. It's already midnight. Kamiju suddenly rose in place. Uh-oh. The room had no clock, but even if it had one, Kamiju would not have had the courage to check it. His gaze zeroed in on Index. She was curled up fast asleep on the tatami mats, but her arms and legs were sprawled about weren't even moving. They weren't moving at all. Index, Kamiju called out timidly. Index did not move. Just like someone with a fever, she had fallen asleep and wasn't responding. A voice came from the receiver, but Kamiju dropped it before he could gather what was being said. A terrible sweat had started coming from his palms. A very bad feeling weighed in his gut like a bowling ball. He had been dropped there. He heard footsteps in the passageway leading to the apartment. We will be there at midnight. You do not have much time left, but make your final useless struggles good ones. The instant Kamiju recalled those words, the apartment door was kicked open from the outside. Pale moonlight fell into the room like sunlight shining through the leaves into a thick section of a forest. While with the perfect circle of the moon to their backs, the two magicians stood in the doorway. At that time, the hands of clocks all across Japan indicated it was precisely midnight. That meant a certain girl's time was up. That was what it meant. Okay, chapter 4, The Exorcist chooses to end. I'll take like a mini break here, just like a minute. So I'll just text BRB. Okay. I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, I'm back. We will be starting with chapter 4. Chapter 4, The Exorcist chooses the end, never say goodbye. With the moonlight at their backs, the two magicians stepped through the door still in their outdoor shoes. Style and Kanzaki may have returned, but Index did not stand in their way this time. She did not shout at them to leave. She was covered in sweat like she was suffering from a fever, and her breathing was so shallow. It sounded like you could blow it out like a candle flame. A headache. A headache so great it felt like even the slight sound of accumulating snow could split her head open. Kamiju and the magicians exchanged no words. Still in his outdoor shoes, Style pushed Kamiju aside as the boy stood there dumbfounded. The shove had not held much force, but Kamiju was unable to hold his ground. He fell onto his butt atop the old tatami mats, as if all strength had left his body. Style did not even look at Kamiju's direction. He knelt down next to Index, whose limbs were sprawled out limply. The magician then muttered something under his breath. His shoulders were trembling. He was a perfect representation of the human anger you felt when someone precious to you was hurt before your eyes. Based on Crowley's Moonchild, we will use the method of capturing an angel to create a chain of events that will summon, capture, and have a fairy work to our ends. Having gathered his resolve, Style stood up. His expression when he turned around was void of the slightest hint of humanity. His face was the face of a magician who had given up his humanity to save a certain girl. Kanzaki, give me your help. We need to destroy her memories. Kamiju felt like those words stabbed into the most fragile part of his heart. He knew that robbing Index of her memories was only meant to save her, and Kamiju had once told Kanzaki that they should not hesitate to destroy her memories if they were truly acting solely for Index's sake. No matter how many times she had lost her memories, they had to give her even better memories next time. That way she could look forward to to the coming years, even if she had to lose her memories. But wasn't that just a compromise to be made after exhausting all her options? Without realizing it, Kamijo had begun clenching his fist hard enough to crack his nails. Could he do it? Could he just give up? Any number of research facilities dealing in people's memories and minds existed in Academy City. Could he really give up here when there might be a happier way to save Index in one of those facilities? Using old-fashioned magic would destroy the memories that she had cared about the most. Was it really okay to continue to rely on the world's easiest and world's cruelest method? No, that was not what mattered. All that boring reasoning and rationalization no longer mattered. Could Kamichu Tuma bear to have the week he spent with Index reverted to a blank slate, like someone was deleting her saved data for a video game? Wait, Kamichu Tuma raised his hand. He directly and honestly raised his head with the intentions of opposing the magicians who were acting to save Index. Wait, please wait, just a bit longer, just a bit. There are 2.3 million experts in Academy City, and there are over 1,000 research institutions running it all. There's psychometry, marionette, telekinesis, and materialize. We have tons of experts who can manipulate minds and labs that develop the mind. If we get their help, we might not have to rely on this horrible method. Style Magnus said nothing. Even so, Kamichu continued about the flame magician. You don't want us this method either, right? Deep down in your heart, you're praying that there's some other way, right? Then just wait a bit longer and make sure to find an ending where everyone is smiling and everyone is happy. So, Style Magnus said nothing. Okay, where is a good stopping point? Okay, page 175. But there's no end of part. Well, I guess I'll just read until page 165, maybe. Style Magnus said nothing. Kamichu had no idea why he was going so far. He had only met Index. Style Magnus said nothing. Kamichu had no idea why he was going so far. He had only met Index a week before. He had lived for 16 years before that without even knowing her, and there was no reason why he would not be able to live a normal life without her from then on. There was no reason why, yet he knew he could not. He did not know why. He was not even sure if he needed a reason why. He just knew it hurt. It hurt to think that her words, her smile, and her mannerisms would never be directed towards him again. It hurt to think that the memories of that week would easily be wiped clean by someone else, even if a reset button was being pressed. Just thinking of the possibility caused a great pain in the most precious and the kindest part of her heart. Silence filled the room. It was the silence in an elevator. It was like the silence in an elevator rather than silence where there was nothing at all to make noise. This was that odd silence, filled with only the faint sound of breathing, where the people there were merely remaining silent. Kamichi raised his head. With great caution, he looked at the magician. Is that all you wanted to say, you self-righteous failure? And that was all the runic magician stylist Magnus said. It was not that he had not listened to what Kamiiju said. His ears had picked up on every single one of Kamiju's words. He had processed them, and he had comprehended their meaning as well as the feelings hidden below the surface. And yet, style Magnus did not move so much as an eyebrow. Kamiju's words had not hit home with him in the slightest. Out of the way, said Style. Kamiiju had no idea how the muscles of his face were moving. Without so much as sight, Style said to Kamiiju, look, he pointed. Before Kamiiju could look over in the direction Style was pointing, he grabbed Kamiju's hair. Look. Kamiju's voice froze over. Before his eyes, he saw Index look like her breathing could stop at any moment. Can you say the name? Say the same thing in front of her. Style's voice was trembling. Can you say the same thing while she is mere seconds away from death? Can you say that same thing as? Can you say the same thing while she is in too much pain to even open her eyes? Can you tell her to wait because you have some things you like to try out? Index finger stirred. It was unclear if she was barely conscious or if she was moving subconsciously, but she desperately moved her hand that seemed as heavy as lead and tried to touch Kamiju's face. It was as if she was desperately trying to protect Kamiju as the magician grabbed his hair. It was as if she did not feel her own intense pain even mattered. If you can, then you are not human. Anyone who could see her like this and still inject her with some untreated drug, let some strange doctor mess with her body and fill her body with drugs, can't possibly be human. Styles shout stabbed through Kamiju's eardrums and into his brain. Answer me, Esper. Are you still human, or are you a monster who has abandoned his humanity? Kamiju could not answer. Style went in for one last blow like a stabbing sword into the heart of someone who was already dead. He pulled a necklace with a small cross on it from his pocket. This tool needed to destroy her memories. Style waved the cross in front of Kamiju's face. As you might guess, it is a magical item. If you touch it with your right hand, it could lose all power, just like my Innocentius. The cross swayed back and forth in front of Kamiju like a 5-yen coin being used for a cheap bit of hypnotism. But can you negate it, Esper? As if he had frozen in place, Kamiju stared up at Style. When the girl is suffering before your very eyes, you can take it. Can you take this from her? If you can believe so much in your power, then negate it. You mustn't. You mustn't. Who thinks he is a hero? Kamiju looked. He looked at the cross swaying before his eyes. He looked at that abominable cross that could rob people of their memories. As Style had said that he could stop the deletion of Index's memories, he took that from him. It was nothing difficult. He just had to reach out his hand and lightly touch it with the tips of his fingers. That was all. It should have been so easy. Kamiju clenched his trembling right hand until it was hard as rock, but he could not do it. For the moment, magic was the one safe and surefire way to save Index. How could he take that from the girl who was suffering and putting up with it all? He simply could not. Our preparations will be complete at 0:15 at the earliest. We will destroy her memories using the power of Leo, Style said to Kamiju in disinterest. 0:15, he probably had less than 10 minutes left. He wanted to shout out and tell them to stop. He wanted to yell out and tell them to wait. However, Kamichu could not be the one who would suffer as a result. Oh, okay. However, Kamichu would not be the one who would suffer as a result. The cost of Kamichu's selfishness would all come back to Index. Just accept it. My name is Index. Just accept it already. Anyway, it would be great if you could feed me enough food to fill me up. Just accept that you, Kamichu, to whom I had no power or right to save Index. Kamichu was unable to shout or cry out. He could only stare up at the ceiling, grit his teeth back and forth, and let tears. He could only stare up at the ceiling, grit his back teeth, and let tears he could not hold back fall from his eyes. "Hey, magician," muttered Kamichu blankly as he continued to stare up at the ceiling and lean against the bookshelf. "How do you think I should say farewell to her in this end?" "We do not have time for this nonsense." "I see," replied Kamichu blankly. Kamichu would have remained frozen in place, but Style did not let up. "Leave this place, monster." The magician looked at Kamichu. "Your right hand negated my flames. I still don't understand how it works, but we can't have it interfering with the spell we are going to use." "I see," replied Kamichu blankly. Kamichu gave a small smile as he had become a corpse. It was the same with that wound on her back. Why is there never anything I can do? How should I know?" Styles' eyes seemed to say. "I can destroy even the systems of God with this right hand." Kamichu seemed to crumble. "So why can't I save just one suffering girl?" He smiled. He did not curse fate, and he did not blame it on misfortune. He merely reflected on his own powerlessness. Kanzaki looked at him with a pained expression and said, We have 10 minutes until we perform the ceremony at 0:15. Styles looked at Kanzaki as if he could not believe what he was seeing. But Kanzaki only smiled when she looked at Style. On the night we first swore to erase her memories, we spent the whole night crying by her side. Isn't that right, Style? Style fell silent for a moment, as if his breath had caught in his throat. But we have no idea what he'll do. What if he attempts to double suicide while we aren't looking? As if he was willing to do that, don't you think he would have touched the cross right away? You only use the real cross rather than a fake because you were already sure he was a human, right? But whatever we do, we cannot perform the ceremony until the time is right. If he had any regrets left, he might try to stop us mid-ceremony. Style gritted his teeth. He held himself back, like he was on the verge of lunging and ripping out Kamichu's throat like a beast. "You have 10 minutes, okay?" Then he spun around and left the apartment. Kanzaki silently followed Style from the room, but a heartbreaking smile could be seen in her eyes. The door closed. Only Kamichu and Index remained in the room. Those 10 minutes had been gained at the risk of not Kamichu's life, but Index's. And yet Kamichu had no idea what he was supposed to do. A few odd noises escaped Index's lips as she lay limply sprawled out. Kamichu jumped in shock. Index opened her eyes slightly. She seemed to be wondering why she was in the futon and worrying about where Kamichu was when he was supposed to be the one in the futon. Then she had completely forgotten about herself. Kamichu gritted his teeth. He was more afraid of standing before her in that moment than he was then he was fighting those magicians. But he could not run away either. Toma, Kamiju approached the futon and Index breathed a sigh of relief. The look on her sweat-covered face was one of relief from the bottom of her heart. "I'm sorry," said Kamiju as he hung his head down to meet Index's gaze. "Toma, there's some kind of magician circling in this room." Okay, read maybe 2 more pages. Index had been unconscious, so she did not know that it had been drawn by those 2 magicians. She tilted her head to the side in a girlish sign of puzzlement as she looked at the symbols drawn on the wall near the futon. For an instant, Kamiju clenched his back teeth. It was just an instant before anyone could have noticed his expression was back to normal. It's for recovery magic. Why, we can't have headaches being this bad now, can we? Magic? Who's casting it? At that point, a certain possibility entered Index's mind. Index forced her unmoving body to move and tried to spring up. When her face twisted in pain, Kamiju grabbed her shoulders and pushed her back into the futon. "Tuma, have the magicians come back, Tuma? You need to get out of here." Index looked at Kamiju with an expression of disbelief. She knew just how dangerous magicians were. So she was worried for Kamiju from the bottom of her heart. "It's okay, Index. Tuma, it's over. It's already over. Tuma," said Index quietly, and then all strength left her body. Kamiju had no idea what expression was on his face. "I'm sorry," said Kamiju. "I'll get stronger. I will never lose again. I will get strong enough to kick the asses of every last person who treated you like this. From crying, even crying would have been cowardly. Inviting her sympathy was unthinkable. Just wait. Next time, I will make sure to truly save you." How did he look in Index's eyes? How did he sound in Index's ears? "I understand. I'll wait." Just because she did not know the situation, it had seemed to Index that Kamiju had lost to the ceremony and sold Index for his own safety, and yet she smiled. Her smile battered. Her smile was perfect. Her smile looked like it would crumble at any moment, and yet she smiled. Kamiju could not understand. He could no longer understand how she could be that trusting people. But that was when he made up his mind. "Once your headaches got better, let's take out those magicians and win your freedom," he said. "I'd like to go to the beach after that, and we'll have to wait until my supplementary lessons are over," he said. "Would you like to transfer to my school once summer vacation is over?" he asked. "I'd like to make all sorts of memories," Index said. "You will," promised Kamiju. He pushed out with the lie. It did not matter what was true and what was false. He no longer needed the kind of cold, cruel, proper justice that could not comfort even a single girl. The boy by the name of Kamiju Toma did not need justice or evil. Fox words were more than enough for him, and that's why Kamiju Toma did not shed a single tear, not even one. Okay, so I'm done reading for today. I hope you guys liked it. Tomorrow or Thursday is gonna be when I finish the first novel. So that would be an interesting stream. Anyways, have a good night, guys. Bye.